What's this thing that's moving over our screens here? Oh my, look, it's a Springbok grootdruk atlas. How is this possible? Well, for those who've watched my previous episode, might know that I looked at a Springbok atlas from 1967, and now today in this episode we'll be looking at the sequel, a next one that was printed, as you can see, in Afrikaans. So if we open this bad boy up here, we can see in this corner over here that it was printed in 1993. Although some of the map details I've seen in this atlas might suggest that it was printed maybe a bit earlier, although I don't see any other date that would suggest that. Colonizing of Southern Africa. Now you can see here's the Cape Colony, Natal, Basutoland, Swaziland, Bechuanaland and the Boer Republics, the Transvaal and the Oranje Vrystaat. Oh yes. As such is the way with all South African atlases from the time. For it must have a racial and language map mode. So here we can see, like the previous one, it also had this, but now we can see it in a bit more detail, all the different groups in Africa. So in pink we have our European descendants, and as we move up we have more of the native people of of Africa and such. And this is definitely a touchy subject. We shouldn't linger too long on this. Yep, it just gets it gets worse. Even for the 90s, South Africa still had this thing of having map modes of races and ethnic groups and things. As you can see here on this page, we have a map mode that consists of the spread or the population density of white people in South Africa and Southern Africa in general, and here we have one of all the different people in South and Southern Africa, the places where they usually live and all those things. Now here we have a more detailed map of South Africa in general, because even though it says this is from 1993, I would guess that it might have been, the map would have been from 1988 or such, because of, firstly, they're still saying Southwest Africa, although it says Namibia here. We still own, South Africa still own Whale Bay or Walvis Bay in Afrikaans, which might suggest that this could have still been a part of South Africa at the time this map was drawn up, although it's difficult to say. And now compared to the previous atlas, we can see that we still have the Transvaal and the Orange Free State, Oranje Vrystaat, the Natal province and the Cape province. We can also see a few more dots dotted around. Now these were introduced during the 80s that weren't in the 1967 version of the atlas, which is all the different Thuislande or Bantustans in English. Now it's basically like the South African version of the American reservations, and was for different ethnic groups in South Africa. So here we can see the Venda group here, the Venda country here, and then we have all these different dots over here being Bophuthatswana, which was a large basically autonomous government that was part of South Africa for all the Tswana speaking people in the country. Then we also have a few other dotted around like Transkei and Ciskei for all the Xhosa people and such. And although if you look at Natal it looks whole, the Zulus mostly lived in this area, and it was because they didn't choose to create for themselves such an autonomous country. Here we have a map of the different elevations compared to sea level of South Africa, as well as all the province lines, as you can see with all these, and the different mountain ranges as indicated in the purple, all the dams, all the major road networks of South Africa. If we look at this map right here, this also is quite different from the map we had in the 1967 version of the Atlas, as back then it was still called the Congo, but here in this version it's called Zaire because it was renamed after the 1967 Atlas because of the dictator that took over being Mobutu Sese Seko, that renamed the country from the Congo to Zaire. And we can also see the capital city being renamed to Kinshasa from Leopoldville, or in the Afrikaans version Leopoldstad. Now what we have here is a map mode that casts a bit of doubt surrounding the date at which this Atlas was published, because in 1993 the Soviet Union had already collapsed. The Eastern Bloc had already vanished, if you can put it that way, and Yugoslavia wasn't this big beautiful green little blob it is on this one. So this casts doubt that this was made all the maps and knowledge was made from 1993 knowledge, because if you look here, this red border right over here still shows us that Germany is still West Germany and East Germany, although it does have the name Duitsland or Germany written all over it. It might still be that it was just to show how it was divided, but that isn't necessarily divided anymore. And in 1993, if I'm correct, Czechoslovakia wasn't Czechoslovakia anymore. It became the Czech Republic and the Republic of Slovakia. But in this one we can still see them as one entire entity, which could be because they had a separation later in the year after this specific atlas was published, although it might not necessarily be. Now this is what also casts doubt on when it was published or when the map modes were put in, because you can see here stands the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, or now in Afrikaans Unie van Sosialistische Sovjet-Republieke. And this is all the same color, showing us that Ukraine, White Russia or Belarus, that Lithuania or Lithuania, Letland or Latvia, and Estland or Estonia were still a part of the Soviet Union along with Russia. Although it shows here that Kazakhstan is its own thing, it might just be because it's a country in Asia, not in Europe. And we can also see here in the Caucasus, we can also see Armenia, Azerbaijan and Georgia are still countries of their own, or still part of the Soviet Union and not countries of their own. But outside of that, there aren't really that many differences between this and the modern map. Now, for those who saw the previous video on the 1967 Atlas, the UK still has dumb names. Firstly, we still have Bedwick upon a Tweed. We still have the Donny, that is Bedwick upon the Tweed, the Donny brother, the Dingus brother to Newcastle upon a Tyne. Like, who came up with these names? It's absolutely stupid. Some might even say it's dumb fries. And now, here in Asia, we can see that compared with the 1967 version of this atlas, there are quite a few differences. Notably, that Pakistan is not called West Pakistan anymore, and it's now just Pakistan, while Bangladesh is its own country. Burma is still Burma, and Vietnam is now the same color and doesn't have a border in between anymore, because after 1975, Vietnam became one country, unified under the North Vietnamese government. We can also see here in Asia that some developments still needed to take place to get to the modern map that we have today. Because if you look here in the Middle East, in the Gulf of Aden, we can see that Yemen and South Yemen are still split as two countries, and Saudi Arabia has one big triangle gap dividing the two, if you can put it that way. And it had to do with civil wars and British colonialism and all that. And one thing that's still interesting is that if you look really, really close, you can see Hong Kong is still on the map, and underneath it in brackets there stands BR, standing for Britain, along with Macau being in parentheses standing Portugal, or port, meaning they still had colonies in 1993, and Hong Kong would still be a British colony until 1997, when they gave it up to China, being this big yellow blob thing that is causing us, that has especially caused us so many issues in the last few decades, especially the early 2020s. And although I might have skipped a few things, especially regarding South America and North America and those countries that haven't really changed anyhow, we are now here at the country glossary, if you can put it as such, or in Afrikaans the bladwyser. Now this is what all atlases have to show all the coordinates of big cities or towns or places of importance, and it is just like the 1967 version, extremely thorough. And you can still see, such as here for example, that some places are still a part of the USSR, which would confirm that even though this atlas was published and printed in 1993, the map they most likely used was from 1991 or 1990, maybe even 1989. But the rest of this is nothing unusual or out of the ordinary, just your usual coordinates you would find in this book. Now, the area in square kilometers of each country in 1,000, so that would mean Afghanistan's land area is 647,000 square kilometers. Then we have the population in thousands, so theirs is 15,108,000, so that would be 15,108,000. Next to that we have the population density per square kilometer. So that would mean in Afghanistan, for example, there are 23 people living in the country per square kilometer. And lastly, we have the country's capital being Afghanistan's being Kabul. So if we were to go look here at South Africa statistics. We can see that their land area is 1,211,000 square kilometers. Their population would be 27,700,000 people. Their population density is 23 people per square kilometer, which is the same as Afghanistan, which is actually kind of quite surprising. And here we can see that even in the 80s/90s, South Africa already had two capitals, being Cape Town and Pretoria. Although now these days, after the 1994 election, that was upgraded to Cape Town, Pretoria and Bloemfontein, being the three different capitals of South Africa. And now we have the final list of this atlas, being the most important cities of the world. Now, this is basically the same as the list that was in the 1967 version of the atlas, but fantastic news, great news, brilliant news. If we look right here at South Africa right here, in 1980, Johannesburg is the number one city, then Cape Town, then Durban, Pretoria, Port Elizabeth and Vanderbijlpark, which all make sense. But those who remember the previous video and watched it until the end, who saw me completely rage at why Brakpan, Benoni and Boksburg were in the atlas, they have finally fixed it. That triangle of the freebies, the place nobody wants to go, the anomaly in an anomaly. So South Africa is already quite an anomaly if I can put it as such, but those places are anomalies in South Africa being an anomaly. So congrats to this beautiful, fantastic atlas that they have fixed this to not have those three places in this book anymore. But other than that, this important cities map mode is, not map mode, list is mostly the same, just a lot less cities or cursed places. And yes, that will be today's episode. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you in the next one.